Oh, this French Riviera. How was it? Was it good? Was it as good as you thought it would be? Yeah, I think it was the last quarter.
Why should I just have to read it? So it comes out of the grab. And then there's this screen. You gotta do this, you gotta do that. So how can we wait? You can't do that. I gotta.
They driving?
Committee Chair, whenever you're ready, I can do a countdown.
Ready?
Alrighty. Good morning, everybody. Our meeting will be live in 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. Please silence all electronic devices for the duration of the meeting. Welcome to the August 18th, 2025 Strategic Planning and External Relations Committee meeting. My name is Melanie Williams, Chair of the Strategic Planning and External Relations Committee. The meeting format is hybrid. Quorum is not physically present at the HART Administrative Office, 1201 East 7th Avenue, Florida Conference Room, and the rest of the board members are participating via communication media technology. No action will be taken today, but the committee can form consensus and for board consideration. Please look at your screens of your devices. An image of the flag is displayed. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move to public comment, 3 minutes per speaker. There was no one scheduled for public comment. Is there anyone present for public comment meeting since we don't have anyone on the list? Did anyone show up or on the phone? Okay, we'll move forward. We have the approval of the minutes. However, we cannot approve them at this time. However, are there any corrections to the minutes? If not, we will move forward. All right, committee action items with the presentation. Jesus Pereza Garcia, Manager of Service Development, on the comprehensive operational analysis. Following the presentation, the committee will be requested to form a recommendation for the full board of directors. Mr. Pereza Garcia, you are recognized to present. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Williams, committee members, Mr. Drainville. My name is Jesus Pereza Garcia, Manager of Service Development for HART. Today, I will provide a summary of the proposed service changes we would like to take to the public. And the action before you would be to recommend the board authorize staff to conduct this public outreach and a public hearing. I'm also going to provide a refresher of the COA process and the analysis done so far. COA stands for Comprehensive Operational Analysis. It is a full review of the entire system to identify strengths and weaknesses that results in short-term improvements such as route realignments, frequency changes, span of service changes. For this study, we hired a consultant, WSP, to carry out the work. We took into consideration a lot of analysis factors and data points like you can see on the right, things like performance, density and growth, demographics, and of course, input from employees and the public. What we would like to get out of the COA is understanding how efficient and productive the system is the entire system is currently. How has demand changed in the past 5 years? Where people are living and how they're traveling, and where will future demand from population growth potentially warrant more service outside our current levels? The outcome of the COA is to make improvements to the system within the confines of our existing resources, which means it'll be a trade-off of revenue hours and vehicles. The result will be cost neutral, meaning it doesn't cost additional money, but it also will not save money. This puts our resources in the best place they can to succeed, pulling from lower performing routes and putting into our productive routes. We had 2 strategies for where we want to reallocate resources. The first is to improve frequency on hourly routes to every 30 minutes, particularly a highly productive route in the core. This will be more impactful because transfers to hourly routes can be challenging. The second strategy is to improve on-time performance so that we get there when we say we're going to get there. Our current travel times on some routes are unrealistic due to traffic. Fixing that requires more resources. This will ultimately improve quality of service for riders and quality of life for operators. Other components of the study happening behind the scenes include looking at microtransit, updating our service standards, and this project also helped us identify the latest priorities in our system, which will inform the Transit Development Plan, or TDP, next year. Here's the timeline of the COA process. It was prompted by the FDOT operational analysis that recommended we do an updated COA and TDP. This project has been ongoing since July of last year. After analyzing the system, HART and WSP considered multiple scenarios of how resources could be reallocated, which incorporated input along the way from our employees and the public. We're currently finalizing the proposed service changes to then take to the public and hear their feedback after the board's approval in September to do public input. With said feedback, we'll make any tweaks to the plan and present the service changes in January as an informational item to the board to allow them time to process the proposal before making a decision. Then we will come back to committee in January and board in February of 2026 for final approval of the service changes. The scheduling process takes about 16 weeks, so we'll implement the changes in June of 2026. And lastly, as mentioned, the COA will inform the major update of the TDP, so we will be coming back to you next year to talk about the future vision. You have already heard some of this information, but here's a brief recap of the analysis. This graph shows ridership and revenue hours. Revenue hours is the amount of service we put out on the road. We, of course, saw a dip due to COVID in 2020, but since then, ridership has actually rebounded, almost reaching pre-COVID levels, while we actually have less revenue hours compared to before. This tells us that HART is pretty efficient with our resources. If you compare this trend to other major transit agencies in the country, such as Chicago, Portland, and Seattle, they have been struggling to recover ridership since COVID, while HART isn't having that problem. This next graph looks at the productivity for each route individually using a metric called passengers per revenue hour, which is what the average number of people riding per hour while the route is in service. What this tells us is that only a few routes are falling a little bit below that metric right now. And just because a route may have less productivity than ideal, we also have other things to keep in mind to preserve a route, such as serving vulnerable populations, key businesses, and major employers, and overall providing geographic coverage to the county where it makes sense. When we show you the proposed service changes, the list is a little smaller than we expected it to be because the routes and the system are performing really well. It's not that there are routes that are underperforming, they're just routes that perform a little less in an already highly performing system. Overall, there's just not a lot we could cut in good faith. Here's the same data as the previous slide, but shown differently based on each route's frequency. The frequent routes tend to be the more productive. Adding more frequency to our most productive routes would translate into more ridership gains, but we're also seeing some hourly routes that are overperforming, which generally indicates a strong demand. This all helps us identify routes that deserve investment and should be more frequent. Another key analysis we did was looking at residential and employment density for Hillsborough County. This map shows 2020 census data overlaid with our routes, which are those yellow lines. Blue is high density of jobs, pink is high density of residential, and purple is high density of both. As you can see, our system serves most of the dense parts of the county. Now, this map shows how population and employment density will grow by 2050. The activity centers, downtown, University area, West Shore, Brandon, which are circled on the map, will continue to grow and density will continue to naturally fall along our current routes. In summary, looking at ridership, productivity, and now density, our system is still operating effectively since COVID. Any shifts in commuter patterns and where people live have not significantly affected our ridership. Our system is currently serving the high-density places in the county, and it will continue to do so, accommodating future growth. So here's what you were anxiously waiting for, the list of proposed service changes. After looking at multiple scenarios, we landed on this final list of proposed service changes. These are just proposed. The public input process will allow for adjustments. We're proposing to increase frequency on an hourly route to every 30 minutes. This is Route 9, running on 15th Street and 30th Street. We're also proposing to improve the on-time performance for Route 34 on Hillsborough Avenue by giving it an extra bus, which will help combat heavy traffic. In order to make these improvements, we need to make cuts in other parts. We're proposing to cut the last nightly trip on Route 7 and 46 due to having the lowest ridership by trip in the system. We're also proposing to remove routes 24LX and 25LX, which are express routes from Fishhawk and Bloomingdale to South Tampa, and also remove the HART South County van service. While we don't take this decision lightly, these three routes are the lowest performance in the system, and we want to use those resources to serve more people more efficiently. Lastly, we also identified and proposed operational improvement to Route 37 by removing the loop into the HCC Brandon campus. Overall, there are not many adjustments or improvements because the system is working well with the resources we have. We're not incorporating microtransit into this proposal because the concept isn't ready yet. There is still more homework to be done as we need to better define what is microtransit and do more benchmarking across the country. Because in some places it has worked and in some places it hasn't. We need to see what would microtransit mean for HART. Our next step in the COA process is to do public outreach after the board authorizes it in September. We will receive feedback about these proposed changes for 1 month from September 15th to October 15th. Our goal is to reach as many people as possible with a focus on face-to-face time with a variety of different formats. We will have multiple avenues to submit feedback, both physical and digital, such as a webpage, comment cards with in-person staff at transit and transfer centers, in-person open houses, virtual town halls, and people can also provide feedback through email, regular mail, or by calling HART customer service. These images are examples of what we've done in the past. During this outreach, we will have a flyer that lists all of the proposed changes and a flyer that lists all the dates to talk with staff about the changes. And we'll promote this opportunity through our marketing channels, like the transit app, the HART website, onboard the bus, sending out an e-blast, doing a newspaper ad, social media posts, and contacting our stakeholders, both internal and external. The action before you today would be to recommend the HART Board of Directors to authorize HART staff to conduct public outreach for proposed June 2026 service changes. With that, I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. I appreciate the report, very detailed and great insight. Are there any questions, Mr. Gilshel? Mr. Schultzler?
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Jesus. Is this the proper venue for discussing the report itself, or are we only to discuss the next step?
So this is just to get approval to go out to public outreach.
I don't know. I think we're asking for a disaster here. Can we go back to the, which screen is it? No, the changes, the proposed changes.
That one?
Yeah, that one. There's what, 8 items, 5 of them impact county. And we're trying to build service within the county to support the expansion and the charter changes. And I just don't see how this helps. And we go to public comment. It's to me, look, we're asking for a bloodbath. You know, all the last 6, Brandon Boulevard, Brandon Net Park, Fishhawk, Bloomingdale, and Hart Flex South. It all takes service away from the county. And they're the individuals we're trying to convince that, yeah, Hart's here for you. And yet all we're doing, and I recognize the reality of what we have to work with, but I don't know, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, it seems, with this. And I'm not saying anybody here did that. I mean, this is the reality of what it is. But how are we going to, I guess my question is, how are we going to spin this so that it is actually beneficial to Hart going forward? And saying we need to make these changes. We fought long and hard for the last year plus to try and convince that we don't do these things. We're sliding backwards, and this is to me something like throwing the towel in before we've even had a chance to get in the ring. So I don't know. I mean, obviously we'll have to move it forward to recommend public comment, but I'm very disappointed with the outcome of it. And I'm not sure. I know it doesn't matter. We got to move forward with it, but I don't see how it helps us.
If I may, just to comment on your, so I think, when we look at the proposed changes and you look at the 24 and the 25, we still have the 365 that would assume we would modify, or we would still have coverage that would cover those 2 routes. I am in the early stages of looking at a solicitation for the customer choice with an on-demand component. I am in early stages conversations with the county. I had a meeting with Bonnie Wise, maybe partnering with the county on some property to actually look at a satellite site to service South County. So there are things in motion that, we definitely have the same concerns you do. We don't want to send the wrong message. But it's with the tight budget, and wanting to have keeping it cost neutral. We look at bringing in the core, increasing the ridership, which increases our federal funding. So there's a couple of different components in play, but we definitely, like Jesus said, we're not taking these changes lightly, and we want to know what the public says. So at the end of the day, there might, possibly with the board's decision, there might be no changes, and it may be the exact same services we have today. So.
Well, I think the increased frequency from 60 to 30 minutes is absolutely critical. The West Tampa, the bus, the last trip, or additional buses. I mean, that makes sense. I don't know. This probably isn't the proper venue to discuss that. And I know you guys have probably beat this to death internally, but it's I don't know. I was hoping it'd be help our overall cause for the future more than it appears. And it may well. I may not be reading it the right way, but I just don't want to set ourselves up for bad press or failure as we're going forward into the with the public outreach. That's all.
Thank you. Committee member McFatcher. Hopefully I'm saying that correct. You're recognized.
I didn't have any comment. I certainly recognize what Mr. Schindler had indicated in the response. So, but I don't know if the decision at this point is solely to go to public comment or evaluation of the proposed changes themselves. But it sounds like if there are comments, those will be vetted before there's a final decision made on these changes, if I understand correctly.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Jan McLean, Board Counsel. Could I just request clarification? What I saw up on the overhead was a recommendation to send this to public comment. But what we have on the agenda is requested a formal recommendation to the full Board of Directors. Is it staff's recommendation to conduct public outreach for proposed? Is it staff's recommendation that you go to public comment, but you're still staying on schedule to take this to the full board in September?
So the request is to have a consensus to get, so the full board can approve this at the next board meeting to go out to public comment.
So what you're discussing here today would go to the full board, excuse me,
That's
and I
correct.
apologize. And then you would go to public comment.
Correct.
Okay, so it seemed to me like that clarification might help, that there would be further discussion at the full board for these proposed changes, and then it would go out to public comment. Does that kind of allay some of your concerns, Mr. Schisler? Because having the conversation here today is totally appropriate. And then because we don't have a quorum, the consensus would be to send it to the full board in September. Or not?
Not really. No, I understand for the process, it does. It would for the process. But I just have the overall concerns as to just maybe I'm asking the COA to do more than it's capable of doing. But we're trying to plan for 27, 28 and beyond. And this just seems to just throttle it. Unless I'm reading it wrong or hearing it wrong. I just think it sends the message that I was hoping that the information would come back and say, hey, if we do this, we'll get that. And this is saying almost like, you can't, you're never going to get there, so why bother? Start contracting. And I'm hoping that's not the end. I'm hoping that's not the message that's going to come out of this. But
can I just make a comment in response to that?
please.
So right now, we're looking at these short-term improvements. And I say improvements, while there are some cuts shown, the idea is to put more service into routes that are already productive and make them more productive. So getting more ridership, improving our on-time performance. But the next planning phase after this COA, and these are service change recommendations for next June, is to do our transit development plan. And the transit development plan is going to look at longer term. So it's a 10-year plan, and it will look at, if we get additional funding, where are our priorities to put more service? So there's, more to this process than just these short-term changes. I guess if that's any comfort, is that we will be having longer-term service improvement discussions so that if additional funding becomes available, we know what to do with it. And we know there's a lot of needs in this county for more service, and we want to get to those pre-COVID, pre-Mission Max levels. So more planning on that will be coming before you all.
I don't mean to sound difficult on this, but we don't have 10 years. We're looking, we have a very short window to make some of this happen based upon all the numbers that we've used for the last year and a half. We got a year and a half to put this together. And it just doesn't support the narrative that I know I'm beating the streets with. Everybody I speak with, all the people that I talk with, this is in order to make HART the transit agency that it needs to be. We got to do this, and we got to do it. We got to do it now. And I'll definitely support it going to the full board for discussion. But I think that's going to be it's going to be a tough we need the public outreach. It's just, it's part of the process. I know we need that, but I'm just wondering the message that we're going to put out there. To me, it's self-defeating.
Yeah.
One of
If
the
I-
questions,
If I may, Madam Chair. The COA also is not a done deal. It's if the board and the public doesn't feel like these are good ideas, then we keep the status quo. Like that's an option as well.
I realize that, but the COA, I would have hoped it would have been more of a supporting tool to this, because we were waiting on that. In our discussions, in order to solidify and bolster our claims of what we're going to do forward, I was hoping the COA would come back and say, hey guys, this is a slam dunk. This is what you need to do. And I'm not reading that, that's all. And again, I'm not trying to take away from the work that's been done. This has been a tough slog, and you guys have worked hard at it, and I appreciate it. And maybe that's the reality we got to live in. But that's wasn't what I think we've all been working for the last 2 years.
thank you. Mr. Garcia, just a tag team. My question was centered on the impact. If you remove those buses, how many people does that impact, and how much do we gain as a result of that?
Well, the route, the cuts are for low ridership routes, so the impact is not as big, like who's losing service. In terms of who's gaining service, we did run those numbers as well. And like, for example, the Route 9 improvement, it increases ridership by like 30% for that route. The Route 34 is top 4 ridership, so improving on-time performance on that route would benefit a lot of people as well.
Okay, I think we're gonna want to know that information when we take it to the board. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions online? Thank you. So the question now is, do we take this to the board at this point, or do we leave it as is? And I think I heard that we would recommend taking this to the board at this point. And I think we have one board member online, and then we have 2 here. So what is our thought at this point?
Well, if we don't approve it going to the board, it goes to the board anyway, irrespective of how we vote on one. Just, we didn't approve it. The others, we do approve it. So,
Okay, thank you. For the record, we are going to move this presentation, and the questions will be considered as we move it forward to the board. We'll take that as official movement. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. The next is a discussion item, and it's 5A, post-session report and HART legislative priorities. And the presenters are Holland and Knight team, and which will include the information. Following the presentation, the committee will be requested to discuss and form recommendations for the full board of directors. Holland and Knight, you are recognized at this time. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Again, I'm Lisa Barkovic. I'm a senior policy advisor in the Washington, D.C. office of Holland and Knight, and I'm your leader on the federal lobbying side. I'm joined here in the room with my colleague Jeff Booth with Booth Transit Consulting Services. And online, I have my colleagues that represent you at the state level, Kim Case and Mark Delgaw. I want to go ahead and begin. I think I don't know if we've really had the chance to really talk about this before, but I really want to extend my congratulations again to the board of directors, to HART's leadership and team on its momentous win earlier this year on the build grant, the $23.35 million for the heavy maintenance facility. I can't underscore it enough. This is probably the build grant program is probably one of the most competitive federal grant, not just Department of Transportation, but federal grant programs out there because of the variety of infrastructure projects it can fund. When the program first began in 2009 under the American, the ARA bill, the American Reinvestment Act, it is received almost over on average 1,000 applications every cycle of funding. And so then it only has enough funding to really fund about 10 to 15% of those projects. So the competitive nature of this program, and for HART to really be able to get in there and have such a great team effort, we're really proud to have been partners with you guys on this. And I think it sets the stage for everything else that is to come for HART in the next decade. This is a great segue to talking about the Build Grant Program, because when it was first created as the Tiger Grant Program, it was an appropriations pot of money. And every year the appropriators had to go through their process and put money aside to the program. And then the bipartisan infrastructure law came along and they codified the program and provided mandatory spending about $1.5 billion every year, and then allowed the appropriators to put a cherry on top and provide some more money if they had that available. Well, the IIJ, the bipartisan infrastructure law, it expires next year, September 30th, 2026. And so Congress is in the process of reauthorizing that key legislation right now. The House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, which is the main committee that oversees the language. The other committees are the House Energy and Commerce, which oversees the NHTSA side of it. They are soliciting, they have already solicited project proposals from stakeholders earlier this spring. We have gone in and met with them to talk about HART's priorities and overall to reinforce the transit priorities of APTA. One of the things that we were looking for is to allow flexibility for grantees that have received grant awards from the low to no emissions grant program to be able to go back and amend their application in order to change their vehicle type. DOT did announce at the end of July that they were going to provide that flexibility. There is more information that is forthcoming, so we hope that this will be a win for HART. There were some details that were missing in that press release that we're trying to get further clarification from the DOT on. The House Transportation Infrastructure Committee is releasing their bipartisan draft bill this October and will hold a markup early November. The Senate is, of course, a little bit behind on their process. Only the Senate EPW committee has held their hearings. What we're hearing from our ongoing conversations with Hill staff is there's going to be a consolidation of grant programs probably in this bill. The IIJA provided a lot of funding for a lot of new programs, but there was some duplicate nature across programs. And so I just want to kind of lay the foundation that I think we'll see some of that get scaled back in a way, just because a lot of grants tend to be, you can put them in one program and then put your project in another, and they're trying to find a way to make that easier for grantees because, putting together lots of grant applications takes a lot of time and effort on every agency, and a lot of money goes into doing that. And again, I mentioned the Senate Banking Committee, which oversees transit provisions, hasn't begun their process yet. But this reauthorization bill is going to shape what HART will be applying for in the future, and will shape, how you move your federal priorities forward. We do have some upcoming federal grants. Right now, earlier in July, the deadline passed to submit projects through the Bus and Bus Facilities Program, as well as the low to no emission bus grants. So those projects are under review now. We're expecting awards to be announced by end of September, because that's by law, by statute. The FTA has 75 days to make grant awards from when you submitted applications. I will say some of those statutory deadlines have seemed to pass recently, just because in the transition of administration, they needed more time to review. We're also expecting the transit-oriented development grants to open very soon, and obviously the capital investment grants process is ongoing. The next round of build will open in November. At the start of the new fiscal year on October 1, that $1.5 billion becomes available, so they have 60 days to get that notice of funding out on the street. So Again, the federal priorities that we're focused on for HART, and this is, collaborative process with feedback from Mr. Drainville and from the staff, but the 21st Avenue Operations and Maintenance Facility Project continue to try to find funding for the next phase 2. We have vehicle replacements, which is a huge priority for HART. You need to replace 33 diesel buses, which are, operating beyond their useful life. And you're going to replace those with compressed natural gas, CNG. So we'll continue to help HART find creative ways to fund those vehicle replacements. And then again, the bus stop capital improvements project. We received from Congresswoman Castor in 2 cycles ago in the appropriations process, $5 million to make a big dent in making those improvements. But obviously, we'll want to continue to find ways to fund the rest of those bus stops so that there's symmetry in between each of those things. I'm going to not take questions, but I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues, Kim and Mark, and let them provide their state update, and then we can probably come back and Kim?
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning, Chair, committee members, and CEO Drainville. I'm Kim Case, one of the members of your advocacy team in Tallahassee. Also online with me is Mark Delagal, the other member of your state team who will present after me. I'll begin by highlighting what happened this past legislative session. The regular 60-day session was scheduled to finish on May 2nd. However, session was extended until June 16th due to significant differences between the House, the Senate, on the budget and the type of tax cuts that they wanted to include in the budget. Even though the budget was smaller and leaner this year, the legislature did include $2.5 million in funding for the planning and design of HART's new maintenance facility, which was our top priority this session. HART received strong support from the Hillsborough delegation and House and Senate leaders, and that support is a direct result of numerous meetings and discussions that CEO Drainville, our board members, and your state team have had with legislators over the past few years regarding the need for construction of the new maintenance facility and of HART's proven track record of doing more with less, as highlighted by the recent FDOT study of HART's operations and the presentation right before us. While we were successful in securing funding in the budget, the governor did veto that line item, along with numerous other transportation projects, and it wasn't directed at HART. We were told that it was because those projects that were vetoed were in the early planning and design stages rather than that last mile, the final stage of construction. And in a moment, Mark will highlight discussions we are having right now regarding other avenues and how to pursue additional state funding that will help leverage federal dollars, as we're working on that at the federal level with our team. I'll briefly highlight 2 other bills that impact transit in Florida. House Bill 7031 was a tax package that was released in the final days of budget negotiations. And there was a technical change made to the New Starts program, which deleted the dock stamp revenue for the program. And it keeps revenue from the motor vehicle tag program, which will still be used for New Starts at $9 million per year. But that was a significant change. Obviously, New Starts is not something that we can use for the heavy maintenance facility, but those funds are matched, non-federal share of capital project match funds related to bus rapid transit and rail systems only. The other change was included in Senate Bill 1662 related to the public transit block grant program. That was FDOT's transportation bill, and it included a change to the public transit block program that will require additional reporting of performance measures by all transit agencies to the Florida Transportation Commission. And this is part of the agency's ongoing effort to increase accountability and transparency. HART is already working with FDOT and will receive additional technical guidance on reporting performance measures to the Commission. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mark, who will discuss upcoming dates for committee meetings in session, as well as efforts to support HART's priorities in the upcoming year. Thank you. Mark?
Hey, good morning, and thanks for allowing me to present. So on the slide deck, you can see the committee meetings that will be taking place. Generally speaking, there will be 2 meetings in October, 2 weeks of meetings in November, and 2 weeks in December as we move into that regular session in an even numbered year, which is early. So we'll kick it off in January. In preparation for that, and really what we're focused on right now, is we had a debrief with the governor's office, a gentleman by the name of Cody Farrell, about what led to the veto and what solutions. I should make a note, the governor's staff was particularly supportive of HART. We had a meeting, Scott was there with us, with Cody and Scott, and they really hit it off. Cody and the team in the governor's office tried to help us with this project. So we went back to the staff and said, "Hey, how do we go? What do we need to do?" And what Cody ended up saying is, "You need to get in the work plan." So Scott gave us a green light, and we have already met once with the DOT staff in Tallahassee, who have gotten the message to try to help us. And our next step is to meet with district staff through kind of the avenue of coming from Tallahassee. And the gentleman over at DOT, his name's Jack Rogers, I like the shoot, is going to coordinate that meeting. So that's what we'll be doing specifically. And then generally speaking, you can see what the slide deck says. We've done a lot of work with local members of the delegation and with key legislators. We got a couple of very powerful members from the Tampa Bay area, the budget chairman in the House and the budget chairman in the Senate, or appropriations chair is, both of those gentlemen are from the Tampa Bay area. And then as the last slide deck, we'll continue to work with our trade association on general issues and be supportive and put it all in the water. But we've got a path. We're just going to work it.
So thank you. I don't know if you want me to answer any questions or.
Thank you, Lisa. We'd open up for questions at this time.
Madam Chair, this is Gary Hartfield. I have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Hartfield. Go forward.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. The gentleman just noted that we needed to become a part of the work plan. Is he referencing the LRTP or which work plan is he referencing?
I'm referencing the DOT work plan, the 5-year plan.
Okay, so that work plan that you're referencing, that's through the TPO, right? Here in Hillsborough County?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm the HART representative on the TPO. Again, my name is Gary Hartfield. I'd love to sit down with you, maybe understand a little bit better our direction, strategic direction on that. Also, I am familiar with Cody, and based on my work with Cody on a similar but separate issue, it's always been cordial, and he's a pretty straightforward, good guy. So I'd love to hear more.
Yes, sir. That's super. That's fantastic. So to be a little bit more specific with our plan. So we met with this guy. So Cody said talk to Jack Rogers, who's in the Tallahassee office. So we met with him, and then after that, what Jack said we needed to do, which what we're beginning to execute as of the green light, is a gentleman by the name of Brian Hunter, and then Justin Hall, of course, the district secretary. And then in Tallahassee, there's a couple of names, Melissa Smith, and then I don't call her last name, but she's known as Gabe, and she's in the Tallahassee operation. So we're going to work with Jack to execute on that, but I would love to have an offline conversation with you whenever is good for your schedule, and we can make sure we're doing it the right way.
I look forward to it. Our CEO, Mr. Drangsville, or Lena, the board liaison, has all of my contact info, and I will make myself available.
Perfect.
Thank you. Mr. Schisler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Got a question on the Fed level. Was that you?
Yes.
Okay. Back during the confirmation hearings for the Moynihan,
Molinaro?
Molinaro, he indicated that there would be no change, or he would strive to make no changes in the funding opportunities for transit. Is he still holding to that?
He is still holding to that. There is a process right now that the Department of Transportation has to even to take further proposals, because the Department of Transportation is going to also submit to Congress their proposal for reauthorization. And that's ongoing now. Jeff, the deadline is, I think the deadline to submit is next week, the 25th. But that said, that he is committed to maintaining funding levels for transit and protecting transit. And, you know, he just was one of the last, before Congress adjourned for August recess, he did get confirmed. And so he is out there running fast and running hard to meet with folks and talk to them about priorities.
I think the one, Jeff Booth, Transit Consulting, one of the biggest issues for transit is going to be that a substantial part of our program was funded out of advance appropriations. And in talking to House committee staff about the program, they said that's really an appropriations committee call. So we're going to have to be working both the authorization committee, but also lobbying the appropriations committee to continue to make advance appropriations available for the program, so that certain programs like build, capital investment grants, those discretionary grant programs got the benefit of advance appropriations to fund them. So that's something that we're going to be having to focus on in addition to the broader authorization bill to try to protect those monies through the next cycle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other questions? Thank you, Lisa, Kim, Mark, and Mr. Booth, and the rest of the Holiday Night for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to information, HART Performance Report, third quarter, FY 2025. Included in the packet is the HART Performance Report for third quarter, and for staff, it's available to answer any questions. If none, we'll go ahead and move forward to old business. Is there any old business? New business? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.